The year was 327 BCE. Alexander the Great had entered the frontiers of India with his undefeated army. He had already conquered many regions, but now a different land stood before him, a place whose people seemed unlike the rest of India. The army arrived in a lush mountainous region where, instead of resisting the Greeks, the warriors welcomed them. Their leader said, "We are the people of Nysa, descendants of Dionysus." Alexander was stunned. A city in the middle of India, claiming Greek origins. A mountain called Meru, a name the Greeks connected with Meros, meaning thigh. And suddenly an old Greek legend came alive in his mind. Dionysus, the twice-born god. And in that moment, history itself seemed to turn backward into myth. The story begins in ancient Greece, where Dionysus was worshipped as the god of wine, ecstasy, celebration, and divine madness. In the Roman world, he would later be known as Bacchus, but Dionysus was never just a god of drinking and festivals. He represented travel, transformation, chaos, and the power to unite civilizations. In Greek mythology, he was described as a god who journeyed to the edges of the world, founded cities, created laws, and taught humanity farming, celebration, and the pleasures of life. And among those journeys, one expedition supposedly led him to a mysterious land. India. This is the story of that divine campaign, recorded for centuries by Greek writers in both myth and history. The story begins with Zeus, god of lightning, and a mortal woman named Semele. According to legend, Semele made one fatal request: "Show me your true divine form." The moment Zeus revealed himself in all his power, Semele was consumed by heavenly fire. But her child was still unborn. To save the baby, Zeus stitched him into his own thigh, the Greek word being meros. Months later, Dionysus was born from there. That is why he became known as the twice-born god. Zeus then sent the child away to a mysterious mountain called Mount Nysa, and interestingly, that same name appears in stories connected with India. This becomes the first clue where Greek mythology and Indian tradition seem to collide. On Mount Nysa, Dionysus was raised by nymphs. They taught him music, fed him grapes, and introduced him to dance, celebration, and ecstasy. As he grew older, Dionysus realized that he wished to offer humanity a new gift, wine, and the freedom and joy that came with it. But Greek myth was never just about intoxication. It symbolized the transformation of civilization itself. And so Dionysus began to travel across Asia Minor, Egypt, Phrygia, and eventually India. Greek epics claim that one day Zeus summoned Dionysus and said, "Go to India. The people there do not know your gifts. Teach them civilization, agriculture, and celebration." After receiving the command, Dionysus gathered his army. But this was no ordinary army. There were no heavy shields, no iron armor, no disciplined phalanxes. Instead, there were Maenads and Bacchantes, followers who marched with drums, cymbals, dancing, and frenzy. Ivy wrapped around their weapons, and the sound of war came not from trumpets, but from music and ritual. This was a campaign where intoxication itself became a weapon. When Dionysus reached India, a warrior king named Astraeus marched out to confront him. The battle began, but myth describes it as unlike any ordinary war. According to legend, Dionysus's followers gave wine to the Indian warriors, causing them to dance wildly until exhaustion overtook them. Only then were they captured, without bloodshed. Near a lake called Astacid Lake, Dionysus supposedly transformed the waters into wine. Greek storytellers later claimed that this was the first divine intoxication experienced on Indian soil. The conflict did not remain only on Earth. Its echoes reached Mount Olympus itself. Some gods supported the Indians, while others sided with Dionysus. Hera fought Artemis. Athena battled Ares. Apollo and Poseidon nearly clashed as well, but Hermes intervened, preventing chaos among the gods. It became a kind of mythical cosmic diplomacy. After the campaign, Dionysus returned victorious. The writer Philostratus claims that he later dedicated a silver disc at the sacred temple of Delphi. The inscription reportedly read, "Dionysus, son of Zeus and Semele, from India for Apollo." To Greek storytellers, this became the holiest symbol of his Indian expedition. Alexander climbed toward the mountain city. The elders of Nysa came forward and said, "We are descendants of the same Dionysus who walked this land thousands of years ago." Alexander was fascinated. Because Greece also had traditions connected to Nysa. Because his own soldiers claimed that the festivals they saw there resembled the Bacchic celebrations of Greece. The locals danced to drums, celebrated wildly, and held ecstatic rituals that later Greek writers compared to festivals like Holi. Then Alexander looked toward Mount Meru. The historian Arrian later wrote, "The mountain is called Meris because Dionysus was born from Zeus's thigh, Meros." Alexander decided not to attack Nysa. Instead, he granted the city protection. This decision was not made out of fear, but out of curiosity and reverence. To him, Nysa seemed like a hidden fragment of Greek heritage buried inside India. And now comes the real question. Did Dionysus actually come to India? Or was all of this simply Greek imagination? Modern historians generally agree on one thing. The answer lies somewhere in between. First, one fact is real. Alexander's army truly encountered a place called Nysa in northwestern India. Arrian records that the people there claimed Dionysus had founded their city and that he was worshipped on a nearby mountain. Other ancient writers, including Diodorus Siculus and Quintus Curtius Rufus, also mention Nysa, ivy vines, and traditions connected to Dionysus. So by Alexander's time, these stories were already widespread. But the second point is equally important. The detailed Indian campaign of Dionysus is not considered historical fact. The fullest version appears centuries later in the epic Dionysiaca, written by Nonnus of Panopolis in the 5th century CE. In that poem, Dionysus invades India under Zeus's command, subdues enemies through wine and ecstasy, and symbolically conquers the East. Most scholars believe this was a literary myth, inspired partly by memories of Alexander's Indian campaign, partly by local traditions, and partly by older Dionysian legends. But the story does not end there. Cultural contact between India and Greece was very real. The ambassador Megasthenes wrote in his book Indica that some Indian communities worshipped deities associated with fertility, celebration, intoxication, and music. Their rituals involved drums, dancing, ecstatic gatherings, and intoxicating drinks, which appeared very similar to Bacchic rites in Greek eyes. Alexander's soldiers also reported seeing ivy vines, mountain cults, wandering ascetics, animal skins, loud music, and ecstatic rituals. To the Greeks, these symbols felt unmistakably Dionysian, and so myth and reality slowly began to merge. Some scholars later compared Dionysus with Indian deities such as Shiva or with older fertility cults from South Asia. But this similarity is symbolic, not literal. It does not prove that Dionysus truly came to India, nor that Dionysus and Shiva were the same deity. What actually happened is simpler. Greek writers interpreted Indian traditions through the lens of familiar Greek mythology. So what conclusion can we draw? The conquest of India by Dionysus is mythology. But Nysa, Meros, and the Bacchic-like customs encountered by Alexander's army were rooted in real experiences and cultural encounters. The Greeks saw unfamiliar traditions in India. and connected them to the stories they already knew. And over time, history gave birth to myth, and myth made history immortal. That is why the story of Dionysus and India still feels suspended somewhere between reality and imagination. If you enjoyed this story and want to explore more mysteries from history and mythology, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel.